evening, I have the incredible honor of introducing someone who has been a hero of mine for a long time, Dr. Sylvia Earle. Like many of you here tonight, I have been inspired by Dr. Earle's work since I was young. Her deep sea exploration fascinated me. I was captivated by her adventurous spirit and her unwavering dedication to conservation. Her record-breaking, untethered walk on the ocean floor, which made history as the deepest walk on the seafloor at 1,250 feet, reflects her fearless pursuit of discovery. As I've grown older and delved deeper into marine science myself, Dr. Earle's journey has been even more important to me. As a trailblazer for women in marine science, she led the all-female team of aquanauts and became the first woman appointed to chief scientist of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. She's a National Geographic Explorer in Residence, a designer of deep-sea submersibles, founder of nonprofit Mission Blue, and so much more. Dr. Earle showed the world the limitless possibilities of what women in science could achieve. I'm especially proud to note that Dr. Earle is also a fellow Blue Devil. She earned both her master's and PhD in botany right here at Duke, and her connection to this university is just one more reason we're all so honored to welcome her home tonight. Just a few weeks ago, Dr. Earle celebrated her 89th birthday. 88th. She has truly inspired generations. Throughout her lifetime, she's undoubtedly left a very deep, positive impact on the world. Dr. Earle has also been a tireless advocate who has shaped not only the field of oceanography, but also the way we think about our responsibility to the environment. Dr. Earle, on behalf of myself, my generation, and all future generations, I want to say thank you for your lifelong dedication to protecting our oceans. Without further ado, I'm incredibly grateful to hand it over to her deepness herself, Dr. Sylvia Earle.
Well, they say you cannot go home again, but here I am. So, I've been inspired by what we've been witnessing here today. Cause for hope. The kids, from my perspective, coming along, armed with knowledge that not only did not, but could not exist not only when I was a little kid, but when I was here at Duke University in the 1950s and in the 1960s. I came and got my master's degree in 1956. 10 years, 2 kids, love got in the way. Or actually empowered me in a different way. And my PhD in 66. So, it's been a journey. And in many ways, I think it's just beginning for me. And I know it's beginning for you. I want to begin my remarks with this image because it's easy to forget. Living day to day, rushing around, doing whatever it is how you spend your days and nights, to realize where we are and the miracle that we exist at all. The universe is extraordinary, and I don't think we are the only creatures on Earth to wonder about what's going on up there? What is it? But we, all of us in the 21st century are so fortunate to be around at a time when we are able to answer some of the questions that humans have been asking, and maybe elephants have too, maybe dolphins and whales, maybe some smart fish who peek out through the sea and wonder, what are all those sparkly things up in the sky? Well, now we still don't know a lot that needs to be known, but we're so much further ahead than at any time in the past. So, lucky me, lucky all of you, we have come along when our species has been able to get off our planet and look back and to realize what a miracle our existence is. How did it all come to be? To realize there's no place in the universe like this place. And but for the ocean, nothing that we care about, mainly life itself, could not exist. There is water elsewhere in the universe. There's plenty of water we now know, didn't know when I was a kid. Now we know there's water elsewhere in the solar system. Maybe life, but there are no elephants, no whales, no tuna, no humans elsewhere. We are of the earth. We and all that we care about were anchored right here. It's taken 4.5 billion years, plus or minus, we don't know exactly, but it's the best we can do right now in terms of estimating the age. But we do know that in about 4.5 decades, we have significantly unraveled the very systems that have taken that long to get to a planet that's just right for the likes of us. If we went back 500 million years ago, there'd be plenty of life on Earth, mostly microbial, lots of water, but we could not live as the Earth was then. So what's changed? Well, now we have horseshoe crabs, now we have fish, now we have insects. It took a long while. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, geologically speaking, that trees and birds and mammals and things arrived. Here we are, lucky us. We are the beneficiaries of the distillation of all this time. And in a very short time, my lifetime, now your lifetime, one species, that would be us, with the power of our really fertile minds to harness technology to alter the nature of nature in ways that very much have seemed to be in our favor. We have converted about half the land to agriculture, half of the arable land to places where we grow things just to feed one species or the animals that we eat. And then think of all the other ways that we have commandeered the natural world, the distillation of 4.5 billion years of fine-tuning. And look at the ocean. About half of the life that was in the ocean when I was a child has been consumed, converted, missing in action. 90% of the sharks gone, on the order of 90% of some of the other big fish, and a lot of the little ones too. Half the coral reefs gone, half the kelp forests, seagrass meadows, salt marshes. Okay, we have the best chance right now that we will ever have to keep Earth habitable. Lucky us. When I get asked sometimes from kids, I am so worried about the future. I mean, wars, famine, disease, climate change, woe is us. And I say, come on, imagine if you didn't know. Elephants can't fix the problems. They're really smart. Dolphins are, boy, and again, I know some pretty smart fish, but first of all, they don't know what the problem, they may know that the world is changing around them, but they don't, even if they did know what to do about it, how to fix things. I think we, as 21st century human beings, far and away the luckiest humans who have ever existed. Because now we know you are among the luckiest human beings on all the lucky human beings in the 21st century because you're here at Duke University, a place that really fosters what got me going, asking questions, being a skeptic. So you hear facts and figures. I learned here at Duke University to ask, how do you know that? What's the evidence? Where, you dig down and say, so, whatever the question or whatever the statistic that you hear, oh, and are we hearing a lot of statistics these days? A lot of information where you can put a D in front of that, disinformation. But you, lucky you, are at a place where you learn how to learn. You learn how to get to the bottom of things. And to be a scientist, anybody can do that. You observe carefully and you report honestly what you see. Everybody can do it, everybody should do it, and we ought to be doing a better job of listening to those who make a career of asking questions, of observing carefully, reporting honestly what they see. Why? Because in all of the history of humankind, never before has this little blue speck been at greater risk. I mean, Earth will go on one way or the other. It's been through a lot of stuff in the past. I mean, lots of great eras of extinction not caused by us. And some people are so worried, they say, it's time to move away. Let's shed Earth and take off and set up housekeeping on Mars. We can do it. We have the technology to terraform Mars. Quite a lot of money is being invested in just that. And I love the idea. But meanwhile, we're Marsiforming Earth. Think about it. The atmosphere on Mars is mostly carbon dioxide. Well, let's put more carbon dioxide into Earth's atmosphere. There's life, maybe a little bit on Mars, but not much. We're doing a pretty good job of kind of diminishing life, except for ourselves, on the blue planet. Just an example. But again, lucky us, the ocean. The ocean is still, despite all that we have put into it and have taken out of it, it's still the greatest wilderness on the planet, the greatest wild space from the surface to the greatest depths. It has changed. Temperature has changed, but that's true of the whole planet. Acidification, an issue because of excess carbon dioxide that turns to carbonic acid in excess in the ocean. The ocean has been more acidic in the past with dire consequences, but we didn't cause it. We are causing this acidification era. This is the blue face of Earth. It's mostly high seas. The high seas beyond national jurisdiction, a very human concept, by the way. We decided to extend our jurisdiction out 200 miles. Did not bother to ask the turtles and the whales and the tunas. We just said, each country has a border on the coast, 200 miles, it's yours, it's ours. But still, that leaves about half of the world beyond national jurisdiction, the high seas. It's still there. A lot going on, a lot of fishing, a lot of dumping, and now deep sea mining is on the horizon to be done or not, our choice. So for me, the journey as a would-be botanist didn't start out as a botanist. It just started out curious about nature And all kids start out that way. I suspect if you ask yourself, what was your first thought about birds and grass and earthworms and caterpillars and things? Most, if not all, kids are just openly curious. They want to know everything about everything. And I was lucky. Started out in New Jersey, met horseshoe crabs in the ocean, but my parents moved to Florida when I was 12. My backyard was the Gulf of Mexico, seagrass meadows. And along came scuba. I was among the ones privileged to be given an opportunity to dive in with 2 words of instruction: breathe naturally. It's a little better these days. But I had a professor who later was at the Duke University Marine Lab and on the faculty as a botanist, Harold Hum, whose specialty was seaweeds, and he kind of got me thinking about, without photosynthesis, without all that stuff in the ocean, and trees and ferns and all the green stuff, animals could not exist. You know, all calories ultimately come from, not from animals. I wish I could photosynthesize, but I can't. I have to eat something or somebody. And, you know, when you think about, lucky us, photosynthesis came along 2 billion years or so ago. And here we are the beneficiaries of oxygen in the atmosphere that didn't exist even when there's a lot of water on the planet in the early years of the Earth. It's so cool to be a botanist who can not only go climbing mountains and into forests, but go underwater. About the same time that footprints were being put on the moon, this was 1968, 69, there was an offer for scientists to join a project to live underwater. What an interesting concept. And I bit. I applied, along with some of my fellow marine scientists. And we put together a proposal about fish and seaweeds and all of that, put in our application. The Smithsonian Institution was doing the reviews. They chose good scientific projects, but the scientists had to also be divers. And I had been diving, so I qualified, except one problem. I was a girl, and they did not expect women to apply. NASA and NOAA did not exist, but the Navy existed. It was NASA, Navy, the Department of Interior, the Smithsonian Institution, who were in charge of the project, and there were no women astronauts. And the idea that women aquanauts could be invited to participate was a big thought. The head of the program, James Miller, I don't know, somehow, legend at least has it that he said, well, half the fish are female. I guess we could put up with a few women. And so it happened. 5 of us, an engineer who had to learn how to dive. Easier to teach an engineer how to dive than a diver to be an engineer, it turns out. So she did a fast course in diving and became the engineer, Peggy Lucas. We lived underwater for a couple of weeks. The guys were all called aquanauts. Remember, there are astronauts and there are aquanauts, but we got to be aqua babes. We were aqua chicks. We were aqua naughties. We didn't care what we got called, just so we got to go. And we did, and it was such a transformative experience as a scientist. Think, Jane Goodall, 15 years studying one species in one place, getting to know chimpanzees very well. How do you study the ocean on an equivalent basis? You lower nets and instruments from the deck of a ship. It's just not the same. You have a passport, scuba. You can go maybe 60 feet for an hour. Imagine going 60 feet into the forest for an hour, and then you have to rush back and get more air. Or 100 feet, you can stay for 20 minutes. Beyond that, well, it gets increasingly tricky. But it's possible. Living underwater at a depth of 20 meters for a couple of weeks, for me, meant I got to know the fish personally. I got to see their faces. Got to know that barracuda, that grouper, that moray eel, and to see how they interacted. And it was a quick course, not like 15 years, but it also gave me an appetite to do it again and again. So I've done it 10 times. I would do it more if there were more opportunities available. I wish all of you, you need to get out in the woods. You need to get out under the sea, and you need the gift of time. And so that's part of what has motivated me to continue as a scientist, as a botanist, as an ecologist, as a curious kid. I just want to know what's going on down there. Living underwater, I mean, it's still very tricky, but there are other ways to build little capsules, like airplanes to go high in the sky. Why not little submarines to go deep in the sea, not just for commerce, not just for military, but for those who just want to know what's going on down there. So we have Alvin, a little submersible at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, built in 1964, the same year that I first had a chance to go to sea. And it's still operating, but revised many times. Got a new pressure hull. It's got all the new fancy gear. It's not the same old Alvin that they got launched in 1964. New submersibles are coming online. Old submersibles are still in operation for 5 years, working with National Geographic and NOAA and with the Goldman Foundation based in San Francisco. We had a project involving kids, teachers, CEOs, anybody we could catch, including scientists, of course. That's this project. 5 years to go exploring around the coastline of the United States. We called it Sustainable Seas Expeditions. Look at that little submarine. There's room for one. You had to be a pilot as well as the passenger. It's like putting on a diving suit and taking off into the ocean. It is so cool. And it's astonishing we don't have hundreds of these, maybe thousands. How many automobiles, motorcycles, bicycles, trucks, vans, you name it, to go anywhere else? What do we have to take us into the deep sea? We're at the beginning of a new era of exploration empowered by technology. Technology obviously cuts both ways. But I'm talking here about technology for good, to give us the ability to do what no other creatures, not only no other humans, have been able to do in all of the history of the planet until, right about now. Lucky you and all of us who now exist. So I've now had a chance to use more than 30 different kinds of submarines. And one of the things that I learned here at Duke, when somebody says, you can't do that, you're whatever it is, you're too tall, you're too short, you speak the wrong language, you have the wrong gender, or whatever it is that you've got, you can't do that. I learned that you can look them in the eye and say, why not? Why not? If it's something you really want to do, figure out a way. I mean, sometimes you can't, but it shouldn't stop you from trying. So, why should I, a botanist, be the one to go out in little submarines going far below where sunshine penetrates, far below photosynthesis? The answer I have is, well, why not? I want to go. Why shouldn't I? Just because I'm a botanist, am I forbidden to go where sunlight doesn't shine? I really want people to see what's down there. It's dark. Get below about 1,000 feet, it is dark and it's cold. everywhere, even in the tropics, it's cold. Near the bottom of the ocean, everywhere, except around hydrothermal vents, a few volcanic areas, it's cold, near freezing in the deepest parts of the ocean. So, this man was the environment minister for Ecuador, the Galapagos Islands. He's a diver. He'd been down to see what divers can see, but he'd never been in a submarine. And one of the reasons that I really want to build submarines is to get people like the Minister of the Environment down to see what they otherwise don't know. They have jurisdiction over vast parts of the ocean, but they don't know who lives there or what's going on. Obviously, I want all of you to see it too. He was a little apprehensive. This is called evidence. But he kind of got over it.
So great.
Can you do it with your hand? Oh, he's right over your head.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This just, it didn't happen right now. Unbelievable.
Why should you go? Because you never know what you're going to see. My daughter, I have two daughters, and both of them have been subjected to all kinds of things, submersibles, going into little habitats underwater. This one now owns and operates with her husband a company that builds submarines. And by this time next year, there'll be a couple of fancy ones that look like this deployed in French Polynesia. And I hope it's just the first pair of many that will be able to be deployed. Why? To democratize access to the sea. It is happening. There are tourist submarines. Of course, they're military submarines. And yes, they're commercially deployed, remotely operated vehicles and all kinds of tools. But just to be able to explore, to ask questions without really knowing what you're going to find, just to be out there, down there. If we did not have equipment such as little subs and remotely operated systems in the 21st century to go down into the deep sea where other forms of equipment, mining equipment, how could we know what damage is being done? How could we know who lives there? How could we know about the nature of the deep sea if we did not have access? We haven't known through all of our history, so we've been really complacent about what we put into the sea and really complacent about what we take out of the ocean. That has to change. We have the best chance there will ever be to protect the habitability of Earth by protecting the deep sea, protecting half the world beyond national jurisdiction. You can turn the sound down or off. And this moment that we're beginning to understand the magnitude of our ignorance, which is a great breakthrough. Only about 10%, if that, of the ocean has been seen, let alone really explored. You probably have heard about the new discovery of oxygen being generated around the areas where manganese nodules are formed in the deep sea. Here, where life persists, exists, great diversity of life, at least as diverse as what you see in the richest parts of the land. Maybe not in species, but in terms of the big wedges of life that occur only in the sea. And that's about half of the known phyla of animals that are unique to the ocean, plus all the others that also have representatives on the land. This, again, is a moment when we're beginning to understand the value of all of life. We have now the biodiversity treaty that is aimed at protecting the diversity of life, land and sea, at least 30% by 2030. Why? Because we're beginning to understand how the planet works. The carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the sulfur cycle, the oxygen, all of the chemistry of life that is wrapped up in life. And there you were seeing it in action. I mean, everybody was having a good time except the little fish. But that's how it works. It's an eat and be eaten, the passage of nutrients, the creation of fertilizer that causes the phytoplankton to prosper, that in turn powers the zooplankton, that in turn powers the bigger fish. But it's all connected. Change the chemistry of the planet, you change everything. Change the temperature of the planet, you change everything. Disrupting these fine-tuned systems that have taken all preceding history to develop. And what do we do? What have we been doing? Treating nature as products on the land and in the sea, turning forests into board feet of lumber, not really valuing forests for what they are intrinsically, not just how much can they do to serve our immediate needs or desires, or wants, but whether it's for economic or ecological or ethical, moral reasons, we simply must look at nature differently. To value 1,000-year-old trees not for how many chairs and roofs and other things we can turn a tree into, but to respect what that tree is. The same is true for creatures in the sea. We have only, even now, looked at them primarily as products. And most of the change, most of the consumption, most of the markets for wildlife from the sea has been developed on my watch since the middle of the 20th century. How much we have scaled up, given the technology that exists to find, capture, and market ocean life, wildlife. There's a big initiative right now, which I wholeheartedly applaud, called Rewilding the Land, putting back lions, tigers, elephants, birds, many things, trees. 1 trillion trees. What a great concept. But what about the fish? We're de-wilding the ocean with billions of dollars in subsidies to find, capture, and market wildlife. It is not, no matter how you cut it, sustainable at this point in history. It's a slippery term. Sustainable. At what level? For what purpose? The same is true with what we're doing on the land, but we have a different mindset when it comes to the ocean. We have policies, we have laws that are grounded at a time that no longer, in a planet that no longer exists. We do worry, and you heard some of the conversations just a few minutes ago about illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. These are concepts that have come up in the last few decades as we have been empowered to go far and wide across the ocean in places we could not get to before, finding populations of fish that we did not even know existed, species that were not known to science until we began to market them commercially by the ton. So, we're de-wilding the ocean, and it's being done legally. It's the legal fishing that worries me the most. I mean, in addition to what we're taking out, it's what we're putting into the ocean. So when we take the fish that now winds up on our plates, we're enjoying a little touch of micro and nanoplastics in the process. Again, since I was here at Duke University, this problem has evolved from the 1950s to where we are right now. We now have entered the Plasticozoic era. Something to smile about, right? I think it is. Imagine if we didn't know. Imagine if we did not have food for thought to ask, what are we doing to the sharks? Why are we killing them? I mean, when I first began exploring the ocean, I was told that there are man-eaters out there, watch out. And then I realized I don't qualify. So I'm safe, but the sharks are not safe. You know, it is man eating sharks right now. And turning them into products, turning them into luxury dining. But so is tuna. It's luxury dining. When one tuna can sell for more than $1 million, that's hardly food security. It's financial gain for a small subsegment of the human population, but at a loss to all of us. When tunas go bust, the ocean is in trouble. When sharks go bust, the same. Good news, we stopped killing whales. We once valued them only for barrels of oil and pounds of meat. I was there in Australia to witness the dismemberment of 6 young sperm whales. It only took a couple of hours. It took probably 30 years to make those young whales. But we have changed. We have a different attitude. We're beginning to respect their language, their society, who they are, not just what they are. That's a change of the sort that we really need, that we can do, to think differently. I heard one of my personal heroes on his 80th birthday, Ed Wilson, say he was really concerned that we're letting nature slip through our fingers. Problem is, nature is on the brink of letting us slip through hers. Killing krill by the ton in Antarctica, can it be done sustainably? By what measure? Who's losing? Who's winning? And why are we seeking to be able to take krill on a level that is clearly disrupting fine-tuned systems where there's been no human predator until the last 200 years, mostly in the last 50. And pulling the cornerstone out of the system, it doesn't make sense at all. And why are we allowing it? And you say, well, it's not my problem. Whose problem is it? If it isn't your problem and my problem, why are we allowing squid fishermen to take over vast parts of the high seas? And even in Monterey Bay, which is part of a national marine sanctuary, oh, by the way, to be able to commercially take squid by the ton. Well, maybe you don't know squid the way I know squid. I mean, a lot of people know squid as calamari, but when you see them on their own terms, it's hard to desire having them on your plate, even though they might taste good. Having them doing their thing in the ocean as part of this network of life, the chemistry of life. Sperm whales dine principally on squid, so they're not safe from teeth. But why do we insist on entering the food chain when we're terrestrial? Most of our groceries, most of our calories, on the order of 99% of our calories come from the land. It's a relatively small part of our diet that comes from either wild-caught or agriculture, aquaculture at this stage. So, close at home, I just had to do it. Chesapeake Bay, Menhaden. When I was a student at the Beaufort Marine Lab, there were parts of that coastal city that at times just, as they said, smelled like money. It was the Menhaden factory cooking down the little fish and turning it into oil. I mean, fish oil is good for you, right? Well, it's also good for whales and birds and a whole spectrum of things in the sea that absolutely are reliant on these little fish. They are at the bottom of the food chain except for what they eat, which are the phytoplankton and some zooplankton too. The phytoplankton generate the oil. The menhaden don't. They get it in their diet. We could go straight to the cultivated sources of the microorganisms that power the zooplankton, that power the menhaden, but that's how it is. You've got a menhaden's view of a menhaden boat, now powered by aircraft to find them, big nets to encircle them and turn them into fish meal and oil. It's changing. It's changing, and there's evidence of it right here, right now with you. I am a witness. I mean, I started out just as a botanist, a kid exploring the ocean, and like some of those who are speaking up here, I find myself drawn into policy because I cannot not do it. When you see something that needs to be aired, needs to be changed, and you don't see anybody else stepping up, I mean, I just had to. And I tell people, especially those who seem a little cautious, do not be afraid to be first, to be a voice, to actually look at the opportunities that we now have with this new treaty to get ratification on a global scale so we have some hope of protecting half the world, at least in the high seas and on the land and sea. They say 30 by 30, it's a good start. And sometimes people with power do step up at the right time. I mean, whether it's Obama, or Bush, or Macron, or you name the leaders who are now looking at the world with new eyes. It isn't just about the economy, or maybe it is just about the economy, because if you can't breathe, nothing else matters. If you can't really have a planet that's working in your favor, it doesn't matter what you've got in the bank or how prosperous you seem to be at the moment. It's looking at the world. It's the best time in history to take action, to give hope for the future, your future, my future, my kids' future, my grandkids. I even have one great-grandson. And I think about, what is the ocean going to be like? Let's see, in 100 years, when Duke University will be celebrating its 200th anniversary, what will the ocean be like? What will the diversity of life on Earth be like? Will there be tuna fish? We have the capacity to take every last one. We almost took the last whale. We stopped. They're doing better now. We now have more sea turtles because we have a different attitude about sea turtles. There are now 160 plus places around the world where individuals, scientists, communities, just people who have committed to trying to turn their backyard or their ocean into something better than what currently exists. To say, this place has reason for hope, and I'm committed to doing this, that, or what other, to move the trajectory from decline to recovery, to look at places that are still in great shape. Galapagos Islands, parts of French Polynesia, like Tetiaroa, where those little submarines will be this time next year. We are on a roll. We've got the evidence. We're experiencing the greatest time of change in all of human history. And guess who's responsible? Look in the mirror. Here we are. We have the ability to change in a negative way. We have the ability to change in a positive way. So I'll be with Johan Rockström, this Swedish scientist who's working with a team of scientists looking at what are those features that make Earth safe? And what are we doing? What are the boundaries that we're exceeding? How do we bring our planet back into safe operating space? And what can you, every one of you, every one of us, do to look at these theoretical and actual tipping points and tip not down over the edge, but let's use this best chance we'll ever have to move in the right direction. I mean, these are theoretical in some ways, measuring what can be measured. There's not a lot about the ocean in these planetary boundary ideas, but it's the ocean, in the end, that will dominate which way we go as a planet. It's the ocean that governs climate. The ocean holds most of life on Earth. It's the ocean that really governs temperature. We have, they have, you have, we all have the best chance right now. So that's it. The last opportunity, the best opportunity, maybe not the last, to keep this little blue miracle spinning in such a way that not just 100 years from now, but 500, maybe more. How long will an institution such as this survive? How long will we as a civilization survive? We have in our hands, in our time, the best chance. And I challenge each one of you to do what you can do as an individual and together. What have you got? Every one of you has got something that nobody else has got. But working together, we can pull it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Earle. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Andy Reid. I'm the director of the Marine Lab. We don't have much time, so I'm just going to make a few concluding remarks. I want to say that this is the second time this week I've got to interact with one of my heroes. The first time was the release of the Duke Centennial video about the history of the Marine Lab. And if you look very closely there, you'll see a picture of Jacques Cousteau. So as I told both of my sisters this week, I was in a video with Jacques Cousteau, who I grew up idolizing. One of my other childhood heroes I get to stand on the stage with today, and I just think it's a remarkable honor and pleasure for me to be able to welcome you back to your alma mater. And I want to just share an observation that I had while I was sitting here today. And that observation is really kind of an arc of history. And it begins, the arc of history is made by powerful, pioneering women who have spent their lives observing, describing, and conserving the ocean. For me, that arc starts with Rachel Carson, who, as most of you know, is widely credited with the beginning of founding the environmental movement. What you might not know is that she loved the ocean. She spent time in Beaufort, North Carolina, where the Marine Lab is. Our National Estuarine Research Reserve is named after her, and I happen to know that she was one of your heroes. The next step in that arc is Sylvia, and we talk about Sylvia as being a pioneer. When we think about pioneers, we think about people opening doors for the next generation. Sylvia's not a very big person, but she didn't open doors, she kicked down doors, right? She never said no. She said, why not? Why not me? And
Not you.
exactly. And so all the things that Lizzy described about Sylvia, all the remarkable firsts that she did, opened doors for others. The next generation I think of are folks like Cindy Van Dover, who, a Duke faculty member, the first woman pilot of Alvin, that Sylvia talked about.
First scientist pilot.
Exactly. Who told me that she had to demonstrate her ability to be able to pilot Alvin by memorizing the entire wiring diagram of the submersible, and that was her test. When she could do that, then she was allowed to be pilot. First female director of the Duke Marine Lab. The next stage in that arc of history were the three remarkable women you saw up on the stage in our alumni panel. Sam, I'm sorry, but you don't fit the narrative, so you're remarkable too, but... And then the final arc are you, the women here in this audience. And I kind of think of that arc as a rainbow, and you're like the pot of gold at the end of it. Because you will be the ones in 10 and 20 years from now who will be on stages like this, talking about the time that they heard Sylvia Earle speak, and how profoundly moved they were, and how it inspired them to go on and do the work that you are going to do in the future. So I just let me just ask Sylvia one thing to finish up with, and I think it touches with one of the last pictures you showed. And I want to ask you, in the arc of your career, and as you see the world now, what is the thing that gives you the most hope?
I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, really, I'm looking at it. Cause for hope, it's right there. Look in the mirror, you'll see it too.
I think that's wonderful. So I just, thank you.
What gives you cause for hope? Ha ha. This is a dialogue, right?
Well, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, the best thing about my job are the incredible students I work with every day. And then I can't tell you how ridiculously proud I was of the three young women who I was able to interact with when they were students here, and how proud I am of what they're doing now. Go look at the posters in the back and some of the incredible work that some of our current students are doing. And it's just remarkable. And so that's what also gives me hope. Last thing, some advice that you would like to give these folks, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. But what last piece of advice would you like to give?
Just go dive in. Whatever it is that makes your heart beat fast, including the ocean. And if you haven't taken the plunge, what are you waiting for? It's there. It's there. And as never before, the pool is open. It really is. Here at Duke University, the organization called Divers Alert Network, DAN, that gives insurance, medical advice 24/7. If you have a problem of any sort, you can call up a number and you'll get an answer. It was born here in the medical school at Duke University. Peter Bennett was the pioneer, but he wasn't alone. NASA was involved. They want to know too about the effects of pressure and extreme ideas, whatever. And how do you protect yourself from either a lot of pressure or very little pressure? Chesapeake Bay, it's right there, the Atlantic Ocean. Just one thing. When I came to Duke University, I had never been west of the Mississippi. And then, because I was a botanist who dived, I was given a chance to fill a place of someone much better qualified than I to go on an expedition to the Indian Ocean. I mean, again, it's Duke opening the door. I had my master's degree. I was working on my PhD. I wasn't yet fully anointed. 1964, the year Alvin was launched. And it was only when everything was ready to go, my bag was packed, tickets were bought, and it was noticed that I would be the only woman with 70 guys for 6 weeks at sea. And there was a little conversation here at Duke. And I guess that's where part of this ethic of, well, why not? And it worked out okay, except that when I got to Mombasa, the Mombasa Daily Times interviewed the scientists, including me, and we poured our hearts out about what it is we wanted to do. And the headline next day, Sylvia sails away with 70 men. But she expects no problems. What problems? Come on. Would any of you guys want to sail away with 70 women? I mean, anyway, it's a sign of the times. There are women captains, and as you point out, pilots of Alvin. It was strictly a guy's world until Cindy, broke the titanium ceiling.
Well, I think you knocked down the door first, so thank you for kicking down the door.
Thank you.
I think we're about to wind things up, so I want to first of all say thank you to all of you for coming out and demonstrating your interest in the oceans. We know how important the oceans are. My friend Prasad is always reminding me the oceans are responsible for most of the oxygen in this world. Right, Prasad? Is that right? Yes. Yeah. But thank you to the organizers, to Lizzy and the organizers for convening this incredible meeting and giving us the opportunity to get together. But mostly, Sylvia, thank you for coming, for being inspirational. Thank you for everything you have done, you are doing, and you will continue to do. And it's a privilege. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lizzy, do you want anything else to say at the end, wherever Lizzy is? There she is. Okay.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Earle. It is truly an honor to learn from you, and we're all very grateful to have you here. Thank you again for coming. Have a wonderful night, and I hope that you're continuing to be inspired by incredible leaders such as Dr. Earle.